Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Enoch Pratt Free Library. My name is Vivian Fisher, and I am Deputy Chief of the Pratt Library State Library Resource Center here at the Central Library. This evening, we are pleased to have Richard Price in conversation with Dee Watkins at the Pratt Library. Before I begin my introduction, I would like to remind you that we have many outstanding forthcoming programs at the Pratt. So please pick up your copy of the Compass newsletter, or you can go to our webpage at prattlibrary.org for future programs. So this evening, Richard Price, writer, producer, and actor, is the author of several novels, including Lazarus Man, Clockers, and Lush Life, all of which have won universal praise for their vividly etched portraits of urban America. He has written 4 television dramas, including The Night of, The Deuce, and The Wire, as well as numerous screenplays, including Sea of Love, Ransom, and The Color of Money, directed by Martin Scorsese, for which he received a nomination for the Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay. He lives in Manhattan with his wife, the novelist Lorraine Adams. This evening's moderator is Baltimore's own Dee Watkins. Dee Watkins is the author of 5 books, editor-at-large for Salon, a University of Baltimore lecturer, and the first Hackerman's writer-in-residence here at the Pratt Library. Please join me in welcoming Richard Price and Dee Watkins to the Pratt Library.
Who shall we?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Hi, thank you for coming. I hope you all found a seat. Oops. I can't read it upside down. So what I'd like to do is just read a small piece of the book, Lazarus Man, just so you have a taste if you haven't read it, and I assume most haven't read it. So let's see. Okay. Hold on now. Okay. This is one of the characters in the book. It's about building just pancakes on itself in East Harlem. It's a walk-up tenement, 5 flights. It's a very old building, and they were building a subway line beneath the building, and the building couldn't take it, had a nervous breakdown and pancaked. And there are 4 main characters, all of whom were impacted by the collapse because of what they did for a living, and they all survived, and they all went on their way, not knowing each other, and then passing each other like ships in the night. Okay, hang on. What did I say? Okay, now one of the characters is this broke funeral director. Okay. Named Royal Davis, and he has he's 3rd generation funeral home, but he has a problem. He doesn't have any dead bodies. So when the building does collapse, he hears the boom, and he sees dollar signs, and but doesn't get any business nonetheless. There's another character who, when he was dealing drugs, one of the things that they were doing like in the 90s with these young hand over fist money makers on the street was they'd all put money down for their funeral. Like it's like fatalistic bravura. I'm not going to live long. Just see you have the money. So this guy comes to the door, and now he's a middle-aged man, and he says to the guy, well, I put my money down, and he's going, oh my God, I'm broke, and this guy wants his money back. I said, no, I just want to, use that money to bury somebody else. So, okay, how much was it? 2,000? No, it's 5,000. You'll excuse me if I don't keep the receipt. But so now this guy has to go out and bury somebody for free because it's been prepaid like 20 years ago. So he has to go. Now this guy, Calvin is the guy he's sort of like the Gandhi of Harlem. Like he gets everything going, the community, stop the violence and all that stuff. And so he's taken Royal to meet the family of this dead kid. And the kid was a good kid. All he had to do was in the projects, he tried to stop 2 sets from beefing, and he got shot. Last time it's the Jefferson Projects. Last time I was in the Jeffs, I was in high school, Royal said. Came up here to buy weed and wound up getting robbed and my ass beat by twin brothers. Calvin laughed. Back then, that had been the Judkins, Jason and Mike. They're in the elevator of 8 building, heading to the 14th floor to sit down with Tootie Speedwell, Reginald White's mother, and discuss the funeral arrangements. The front door of the apartment had a sign, Little Sunshine Daycare, spelled out in uneven multicolored letter magnets dancing beneath the peephole. The bell produced an anemic tinkle, which Royal couldn't imagine anyone hearing, but a small boy came to the door no time at all, then disappeared, leaving them to walk down the storage bag-lined hallway, family photos covering the close walls, past a bathroom and a number of bedrooms on either side. Through an ajar door, Royal caught a glimpse of a small, elderly woman gripping a fistful of tissues and staring at the ceiling as she lay fully dressed on the bed. Tootie, the mother, was waiting for them at the table in a small dining alcove that opened out into a darkened living room dense with potted plants. She was a heavy-set woman with a motionless face that looked half erased, as if some great hand had smeared its features, her eyes bunkered into slits, her blanched skin the color of sand, her hairline commencing so far back on her head that it looked shaved. But when she saw Calvin, it's the Gandhi guy, when she saw Calvin, she got up so fast that the 2 plastic glasses of water that were laid out for them jumped off the table and hit the floor. Her sister Rose, who was in the kitchen washing dishes, came out with a roll of paper towels and started to swipe at the floor, Calvin squatting down to help her out. Hey, Rose. He was inches from her face, but she wouldn't even look at him. And when they were done, she went back without a word and resumed washing the dishes so loudly that it sounded like she wanted to murder each plate. At the table, Royal sat quietly, awaiting his cue alongside Calvin, who reached out to take Tootie's hand. How's Mommy? Referring to the grandmother. She's trying to sleep. You need to check on her? No, I just wanted to get some rest. Calvin turned to Royal. Go. My sincere condolences, Miss Speedwell. Royal, using his funeral planning voice, solemn but not sepulchral. I understand that Reginald was a very good kid. He is, the mother said. Was, Aunt Rose said from the kitchen. The mother didn't seem to register her sister's angry correction, but Calvin sure did, staring balefully at the half wall that separated the 2 rooms like he wanted to put a hole through it. Royal forged on. If you feel like you're ready, I'd like to go over some burial options with you. I don't have money for any of this. Tootie, Calvin taking her hand again. I told you, we got this. We. Since we're working with a small budget, Royal said. A grim-faced, thickly built teenager wearing a T-shirt and sweatpants, a tattooed spider web rising and spreading from his gullet to his jawline, came shuffling shoeless into the dinette and sat down next to Tootie, who clutched his forearm. Petey, Calvin said. Calvin knows everybody. Petey, Calvin said, I'm sorry about your brother. The kid barely nodded at that, his eyes trained on the table. Royal knew that look from a number of young men's funerals, a brother or a cousin or a friend, whether they ultimately did anything about it or not, mulling over how to even the score. Or on the other hand, this kid's leaden silence could come purely from the weight of his grief. Royal started over. Since we're working with a small budget, what I would first suggest to you is cremation. Tootie shook her head. No, Rose called out from the kitchen. Petey had no reaction. I respect that, Royal said. He would have been surprised if they had agreed. In his experience, most low-income families hardly ever opted for destroying the body. Petey, you good? Calvin reached across the table to tap the back of his hand. Another option is called a direct burial. The phrase wasn't exactly self-explanatory. Tootie looking at Calvin, then at him. The body is buried without embalming in a non-pine coffin, which goes directly into the ground. He had her attention, at least, Royal bracing himself to deliver the downside. But without the embalming, due to the nature of nature taking its course, there'll be no viewing and no ceremony. No, I want a ceremony, Tootie said. You can always have a memorial service after the burial. No, I want people to see him. I understand, Royal struggling to keep his voice from losing its equanimity as the overall costs continued to rise with each rejection. Now, I would be happy to offer you the use of our private chapel. No, I want a church. Shit. Royal speed tabulating. Church fee, 500. Sexton, 100. Organist, 200. Florist, 250 for a casket spray. Spray transpo to cemetery, 500. Casket, even with a cloth-covered non-pine, 1,800. The burial had to be in New Jersey, where it was cheaper, non-plot, non-title, maybe a plaque, 400 with no stone. Do you attend one? Do you attend a church? No, and this is what I get for it. Tootie, it's not your fault, Calvin said. No, it's fucking not, Rose said, back to banging the dishes. Petey, get them some water, Tootie said. Petey eyed the half wall that separated him from his aunt, then reluctantly got up to do what he was asked. Rose in the kitchen started right in on him. My sister's baby gets killed. Now she has to deal with all this shit. Her voice like a slash. This is how you looked out for your brother? Where were you that night, huh? All they could hear after that was Petey sounding like he was choking on a bone, sounding like he was strangling himself. Hey, Pete, Calvin called out, come on back out here. Tootie, her sunken eyes turned to a window, seemed oblivious to her sisters tormenting her son. Royal was familiar with this too. Families suddenly tearing each other's guts out at some point during the funeral arrangement. And this is how I choose to make a living, he thought. Petey came back out, but not to the table. A moment later, they heard the slam of a bedroom door. Excuse me, Calvin said, rising and going into the kitchen. Why do you want to go and gas up his head like that? Calvin's disembodied voice carrying into the dinette. You want your sister to have to bury him too? You want your mother to go through this again? He should have been there, Rose said. Royal sat alone with Tootie. Where were they at? Churches. How about anybody else in your family? Do they attend somewhere? Well, Mommy used to go to Rosa Lima, but I don't like that priest they got there, Father Ikubo. I can't understand anything he says. Calvin left the kitchen and headed down the hallway to find Petey's room. Is there someone else you'd like? I don't know anybody right off. I might know a few good pastors, Royal said. There was just one, a part-time preacher whose father he had buried a few years back, which hopefully made it a freebie. We can have the service here, but the burial is going to have to be in New Jersey. Mount Nebo, Tootie said, with his father. Right, Royal said, relieved that he didn't have to break down the comparative cost or itemize what she could and couldn't get over the state line. When Calvin finally came back to the table, the business for the day had pretty much concluded. As they headed back down the hallway towards the front door, Royal glanced into a bedroom and saw Petey sitting hunched on the edge of his twin bed, glaring at a TV, not a foot from his face. That's it.
I love that you chose that scene to read because well, it made me laugh, even though I know it wasn't comedy, but it made me laugh because of the cultural difference in dealing with death. Like if somebody come from a rough spot especially if it's a black neighborhood. They do not play that, yo, we gonna cremate. And no, like you literally have to walk past the body. And the biggest lie that people always tell is, oh, the body looks so good. And it's like, I've never seen a good looking corpse. So I love that. Personally, when I take on projects, when I start to, you know, to write books or whatever, like it normally like starts with an idea. And I was wondering, when you decided to pen Lazarus Man, was it like a single idea? Was it a collection of people you met, or? I think you might need the microphone. Yeah.
Is this on? Yeah. You know, I had just finished published a book in 2008 called Lush Life, which is sort of like a panoramic novel about New York's Lower East Side, you know, when the gentrification of poorer neighborhoods, it was the gentrification thing. And I tried to create portraits of people from all walks of life in the Lower East Side at that time. And when I moved to Harlem, a couple of months after that, you know, in my mind, I would have liked to have done the same thing for Harlem, fully aware that I'm white and not wanting, just, it's a place. But I felt like I could do it without stepping on anybody's toes. And the only way to do that is write something very good. The problem is when I got to Harlem, I felt like a tourist because I've never lived in Harlem. I mean, my family has connections to Harlem going back to the turn of the century. But I just felt like everything I saw was, wow. You know, like talked about, hey, Lorraine, I just met this guy down the street. Wow, what he said. You know, and everything was wow. And you can't write a wow book unless you're writing like a Fodor's, travel guide. And I realized I had to live. I just had to live, not necessarily write, just had to live in Harlem, which I proceeded to do and still live there. And just not even think about the book so much as just be there and just osmosis. And until what was originally wow becomes, oh, that again. You know, so at least you have a belly for what you see. You know, it's not like, you know, hey, Marge, you know, like it was a journalistic phrase to get somebody's eye. You know, I just had to calm the hell down and live. And so, you know, writers are the only people, you know, who get paid, who are working when they look out a window. And I just that. And I just, over the years, it's like, I always use the analogy, it's like I had the right street, but I had no idea what the house address was. And so over the years, it was a course of, you know, zeroing in. And the plot is the last thing that comes to me. And in 2014, 6 years later, there was a building collapse about 13 blocks south of me, 116th and Park Avenue, if anybody knows the city. And the vibrations, you know, went through my house. And I just ran down there because I wanted to know what the hell happened. And I just became part of the crowd down there. But even then, I didn't know what I wanted to write about. I didn't say, aha, this is it. Here's my centerpiece. You know, even that was an evolution. So, you know, like I said, 2008 to 2024, it's like the book, if it was human, it would be a junior applying to college. And sometimes you just have to go at the pace of your absorption and hope it keeps you where you want to be. And I can't write anything that I don't love. I don't love you have to love your characters, even if they're you know, bad guys or bad women or, you know, demonic. There's something about them that you have to love. And I just came to create characters that were amalgams of a lot of people that I came to love. And once I had to love, and once I had, all right, maybe I could use this collapse, you know, okay, I have a book.
One of the things that the book made me think about a lot is something that I think a lot of us take for granted is the way that these types of events, the building collapsing or tragedy in general, connects people. Like I always felt like I never really valued that enough. Like we're connected because this bad thing happened, but what can come from that? Was that in your mind while creating this, or is this just something that you're wise enough to know?
Sometimes there's just so much organizing you can do before you start writing. I knew the 4 characters I wanted. One was a detective, a community affairs detective who goes down there because she's one of the detectives trying to figure out, who's accounted for in this building and who's unaccounted and how to find the unaccounted people. One is this funeral director who's broke. And to him, it's like, oh, man, this could be money. I need it. I have this free funeral coming up. Another is a guy who gets trapped in the collapse and is miraculously discovered like 36 hours after all the sensors and the cadaver dogs have cleared the area of all living trapped people. And he's a miracle. It's a miracle, his revival. It's a terrible story for the city, but here's a guy who came out, thumbs up, and it's a positive coda at the end of a dark, dark tale. And how this changes his life. He was a nobody, and now people want to hear him talk. And there's a 4th person, but I can't remember who it is. Felix, the photographer. Oh, yeah. Then there's a photographer, a kid who lives... I'm 75. Just give me a break. Although 75 is the new 73. Anyway, oh yeah, there's this kid. Oh, that's right. What's his name again? No, I'm kidding. Felix. So Felix, he lives right across the street from the building. And he's 24. So he's from upstate New York. He's living in a brownstone that's been converted to an SRO. He's a fish out of water there. He's adopted. He doesn't even know what race he is. And he moved to Harlem because maybe my tribe is here. And he doesn't have anything except his camera. He as long as he has a camera around his neck, he is a man with a camera. And so when the building goes, the force of the explosion just throws him out of bed and rolls him into a wall, breaks his nose. And he, just by reflexes, gets dressed, grabs his Nikon, and goes out in the street and just starts snapping away, taking videos, taking photographs. And how this experience of being on the street that day with a camera is going to change his life.
So we have Anthony, we have who becomes, he's becoming a star. He's the one that was trapped under the rubble. We have Royal, the funeral director. We have Felix, the photographer, and then we have Mary, the detective. All of these people, their storylines, they're amazing. They're written very well. They're very interesting. And I was wondering, as a writer, do you live in a way where you are able to just float around the world and collect these perspectives, or you just like dreaming them up? Or
well, it's always I don't know about the world, but I could float around the neighborhood fine. I've lived everywhere in New York City over my life, but I'm not really interested in Czechoslovakia in terms of what I'm going to write about. I mean, I was born in the Bronx, raised in the housing project. And, the city and working class people and people on assistance are the people I've always known. And just like if I was raised on the coast of Maine, I'd be writing about lobstermen. If I was living in the mountains, I'd be writing about trappers. It's where you live. The place is a character unto itself. And it should be a character you don't have to agonize over. It's like that character, well, it's called, East Harlem, or it's called New York City, or it's called whatever. And then the other people you really got to make up, by this sort of alchemy between real life models and how to make real life people into Frankenstein monsters of like 3 people that you like, and make that a one person and walking around.
When you read in a book, I encourage you to just take some space to appreciate the different worlds, because there's so many details that are just like like Felix is on he's on a journey for many things, but it's I feel like he when I first met him, he had a confidence issue. I really like the way Mary interacts with her children. I like that the man she's sleeping with, she doesn't want to bring him to her spot. She's like separated or newly divorced. She doesn't want to bring him to her spot because if somebody comes over your house, they never leave. So they meet in hotels. He wants to take her on a date. I think he said they should dress up like
Pandas.
like pandas.
They should put on giant fucking panda costumes. This way nobody will know it's us.
But there's so many very personal things and very interesting things, and it made me feel like, it made me wonder, like, I'm like, so Richard Price is at a restaurant or a bar, like, the fuck is he talking about? Like,
well, this is it. It's you go out, and I've said this before, and I apologize to my wife Lorraine Adams for listening to this yet again. But it's like, for me, I so much rather hang out than write. I mean, hanging out with the people that I'm interested in, that's my social life. I don't want to hang out with people like me, except for my wife, who's my twin. And I want to go out there, and sometimes you go out there, sometimes you don't even know why you're going, or you don't even have okay, here's my agenda for this evening's walk around. You just go someplace and you overhear things, or you see things, or somebody says something out of the side of their mouth, and it's like you don't even know what you're going to get. And it's like being in a casino for me. But even then, I'm just absorbing. I'm not going, oh, this will be great for my novel. I hope I remember it word for word. It's just, you live. You live, and you get to be like a sponge. I mean, the more years you have, the more experiences you have under your belt, the more types of people you met, the more you can bring to the party without having to go out on the street, without having to be a journalist or an anthropologist. It always shocks me at some point, because I'm so into like nailing things, in some soulful way, that, oh my God, I can make stuff up. Fiction, right? That's what it's called. And I don't get in trouble. I'm supposed to lie. But the whole point is to lie responsibly, which is to say, make something up that is within the bounds of plausibility. I'm not going to have like a building super all of a sudden, break up a bank robbery. It's like, what are the bounds of what are the parameters, realistic parameters of someone's life in this type of situation? And it's still amazing to me. I can make stuff up. I don't have to just know what it's like, but I can just play with it and create something. Because if you're out on the street, or if you have an assignment as a journalist and you do all this research, you spend time in court listening to testimony and this and that and the other, that's just fodder. That's not art. The art comes from taking all this life, bringing it back home, looking at it, and figuring out, how can I shape this? How can I cheat the chaos of life into a shapely thing that is like life, but it's a little shapely, and it cuts out all the ellipses. It's not a dialogue per se. I mean, like when I write a movie, I could write the worst dialogue in the world. The actors will, once the actor's speaking, you're listening to the actor, not the writer. And the actor will make it, move it around their mouth until it sounds comfortable to them. And all of a sudden, voila, you have good dialogue. It's just, I don't know. I love where I live. I love I love the people I know. And the more I live, the more I have to write. It's not an assignment. It's just this marriage of a happy married life with someone who is completely in sync with me as a writer, you know, as an intelligent soul. And going out there with this kind of like calm fortitude, you know, about other aspects of my life and just opening myself up, just opening up your heart, you know, and see how much light comes in.
I think one of the things that that I would imagine that people in the right people who write in the audience will want to hear about is just the confidence of balancing these many different perspectives. Like sometimes, you know,
Confidence.
like I'm writing a novel right now, and I'm nervous about the woman I'm writing because I'm like, am I going to get it wrong? I know Black writers who aren't comfortable writing white people. I know white writers who aren't comfortable writing Black people. I know, like, you know, people just when you're stepping in these different places, you want to make sure you're capturing it in the best way possible. And I feel like that's something that you mastered in your work.
Well, you know, the thing is, you know, I'm painfully aware that I'm a white writer writing about a predominantly Black, you know, historic area, or not necessarily just Black, non-white. It's also Hispanic, it's Asian, it's right now it's everything. And the thing is, there's the self-consciousness that comes with, am I allowed to do this? And then you're allowed to do anything, just do it create as three-dimensional and palpable a character as you can. And if you're so worried about creating an honorable, palpable, oh, that's okay with us, Black character, you better do the same thing for the white character. And if you're doing that to the white character, hey, don't forget the Black character. They're all humans, you know, and just the unknowableness of the white gaze. You don't have to know everything about, you know, a person. You just have to just tap the humanity that feels like, yes, this is a human being, and this is what a human being does in these circumstances. And it's scary. I mean, when I wrote Clockers, I was at 1992. I was freaking out. I mean, I thought I was going to, you know, get dragged through the streets of Laredo. But I had to do that. That's the only way to do it.
Clockers is a perfect book. Do you think? I feel like Clockers is a perfect book. I think it's a perfect novel. You feel like it's a perfect novel? I mean, you might be biased. I mean, I asked Lorraine.
What am I, Trump? It's like, oh, I think it's yeah.
Well, first of all, he's a little nervous tonight, but he not now and goes to uneducated society. Just can't speak everything.
So many writers I know. So many writers. So many writers. So the one
Thank you,
thing.
hon.
The one thing, so I'm gonna give you some.
That balloon.
I'm gonna give you guys a glimpse into like what's happening in the world, right? When we talk, you know, when we talk about books and novels and all of these different things, there's a lot of writers. There's a lot, and this is one thing when we talk in diversity that connects people, right? There's a lot of white writers and Asian writers and Black writers and all kinds of writers who are jealous of Clockers because they can't recreate that.
Yeah.
So you're bringing them together.
Yeah.
You're bringing them together.
But you know what? God, I once gave a reading in the San Mateo jail in Oakland. It's like the birthplace of the Black Panthers. And it was a pen program, and they brought me in to this large room, and there was all these convicts there. And I'm reading dialogue from Clockers. I just felt like my dick was going to fall off. I was so scared. And one guy raises his hand, and he said, "How did you do that?" I was like, whoa. And he said, "You know, how do you know how I speak?" Okay. But I mean, the thing about confidence, I've never been confident in my life on any book. every book, just because you wrote 10 books, the 11th one guaranteed is, oh, I never read anything like this. It's going to be a catastrophe. I said that on book 8, going into book 9, going into book 10. And I remember Lorraine watched me when I was writing the Whites. I was like psycho. I was pulling out my hair. This is garbage. This is trash. And my daughter came over. And my daughter at that time was, in her mid-20s. And Lorraine said, you should see your father. He suffers so much. And he says he's never suffered like this before. She says, are you kidding me? I remember when I was 4, he was in his office. I don't even know what he was writing. But I had my little friend on a play date. I said, oh, let's visit my daddy. And I opened the door and he's in there, motherfucker. And he's punching the walls and he's weeping. And all my friends, we like reverse film back down. So don't tell me this is the first time he's, it's, the old cliche is, some screenwriter once said, writing is easy. Just pull up to the typewriter, roll up your sleeve, take a scalpel and slit your wrist, let it bleed over the keys. I think in the bookstore, I don't know. If you go in the bookstore, in my mind, every book, the floor should be covered in blood and it should be dripping from these books. All you see is the finished product. And now I could talk like I'm confident because it's done, but catch me 6 months earlier,
That's the secret. So I think I come in with too much confidence. So I need to do it the other way, and I like the result more. Being in Baltimore and you worked on The Wire, does anything come to mind from those days? Any funny stories from that time in history?
Well, I just remember one day, I didn't come all that often. They didn't really have a writer's room. Well, I guess, a bunch of times. And once my daughter was playing a very young crack whore. And David said, is this okay? I said, look, she's going to have a great college admissions essay. My dad made me a hoe for HBO. But basically, it was in the context of why I met all the people. And, I walked around the neighborhoods where they were filming. I do remember once when they were shooting on one beat up street in West Baltimore. And the people who ran the Wax Museum, the Black History Museum, was in the background. And they said, you cannot shoot here. Just, we will not be a party to this show. And oh my God, we got to freeze and stop. And the director, Agnieszka Holland, she walked one street over and said, okay, let's shoot here. The street looked exactly the same and you couldn't see the museum. So it was it was no man's land. And the thing about it is people know, I know this from any poor area, people know its reputation. And people get into papers because they were killed or they did something horrible or they were a victim of something horrible. Nobody writes about the kid who graduated high school. Nobody writes about the kid who did his homework, and actually went to college, community college, moved out of the neighborhood. That's not newsworthy. There's nothing in there. It's not juicy enough. So the newspapers kind of enhance the reputation of a place. But even in the most dire place, there are decent people just trying to make ends meet. But like I said, there's nothing sexy about them. And, that's what I saw too.
Oh, you've had great success in literature and also in television and film. If you had to just like redo your life and pick one genre to just write in, what would it be?
Novels, but if they paid as much as TV. If it was novels, I'd be out selling apples from a cart on a street corner. Nobody can live on the residuals of a novel. Maybe there's like a dozen writers in America, and most of them are like they churn out one book a year, and they have massive followers, like detective writers. But any novel that's worth its weight, you can have the same style, but you got to say something different. And that takes time because it's like you have to be different than the list. You have to have learned something about the world. You know, for a while, I was teaching in various Master of Fine Arts programs, which grad MFAs, you know, and it would have graduate students. And it's like, what can you teach a writing student at like 21? What am I going to teach them? Grammar, what's an object, what's a subject, and I have nothing to teach them. And the only thing that would be a solution to improving their writing is to swallow a pill that would make you automatically 20 years older than you are right now. I mean, then you have something to write about because then you have some life under your belt. Everything else is just style and dash and, madcap humor.
Tell them MFA students to be original. Be original, be original, be original. Stop trying to sound like your hero. Be your own hero. You.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't want to talk about teaching creative writing because I feel like I should put handcuffs on because I did that. It's like impersonating a teacher. But it's, you say, so what I found is that these young kids were just, they were writing about what they saw on TV because they felt like their own lives weren't worth writing about because they were so, every day. And I just felt like, the jewel is the everyday. So I said, write about what you know. And they did. And the writing got better. Then the next semester, they had another writing teacher, John Gardner, the novelist. And he started reading what they were writing. And he said, why are you writing this crap? Well, he said, Professor Price told us we should write about what you know. He says, who cares what you know? You're 18, make crap up. Jesus Christ. As they say, that's why they have horse races.
So we want to open it up for questions. There's a microphone right here. There's a microphone right here. Please choose the one of your liking.
Well, correct. We do have two mics. There's one where I am standing and one where my associate Brittany is standing. Please do not be shy. We also have some questions in from our online audience. And I'm going to kick us off with one of those. You mentioned having something you need to love in a character you write. Do you have a favorite character that you wrote in Lazarus Man?
Do I have a favorite character?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the woman who, the detective,
I would guess
Mary Rowe. She's just, to me, she's the one that was the least stretch for me. I mean, I just felt like I just knew her, even though I made her up.
It sounds like you love New York City. I'm just wondering if you didn't live in New York City, how your writing would be different, or would it be different?
Well, it depends where I would be living, because my writing would be informed by wherever I was living. As I said, I'd be writing about trappers if I lived in, in the Rocky Mountains, but I don't, But so if I lived in Baltimore, I'd be writing about Baltimore. If I lived in another city, I mean, basically, the whole point is not just to write about New York City with such New York City-esque accuracy. The point is that the place that you're writing about should be the place in which the city in which the reader is living. If I write about New York, it's this the specificness is besides the point. It's the universalness, that carries the book.
We do have another question from our online audience. How different is your writing style between writing a novel and writing for TV?
You had to ask that. No, listen, the whole thing is, and Dee and I were talking about this backstage in that floodlit green room where I tell you anything, just please turn off the lights. Sorry, I just had to get a lamp in there, Jesus. Anyways, screenwriting is, you're writing your hired pen, you're writing for people, and these people, because they're paying you, it's their thing. You're setting up their thing. You're like, and you have bosses, and the considerations that will make a screenplay successful have very little to do with the screenplay, unless this is exactly what that network or entity, streaming entity is looking for. I mean, I could write Othello, and well, they can't get Denzel, so we're not doing it. We thought we had Denzel, but he left to do a boxing movie. It's not about the writing; it's about all the stars lining up, and as such, you care less because you know the game, and you kind of condition yourself not to care as much. It's a deal. You have a contract with people. You accept the contract. You do the best you can, and whatever happens to it, I'm too old to be outraged anymore. Novels, it's all you. Nobody can tell you what to do. At worst, it's like your editor takes you out to lunch somewhere, has a suggestion, you reject it, and they get all nervous and say, "I don't like being an editor." It's you. It's all you. You take all the blame. You take all the credit, and this is mine. A movie is not mine. A TV series is not mine. I'm not directing it. I'm not producing it. I'm not acting in it. I'm not editing it. I'm not distributing it. Through a service. I'm the writer. First one in, first one out. Keep your finger crossed. Maybe this time. Maybe this time.
How did you feel about Clockers, the film?
I had mixed feelings about it. I thought some of the things, a movie can give you things that a book can't, and a book can certainly give you things that a movie can't. A book can gives you the interior of a character's mind. There's a narrator, there's a voice, there's an author who is directing the show. There's nuance. Spike is a visual artist, and mostly he's a visual artist. I don't think he's a terrific storyteller. I don't think he's as interested in the story as he is in the visuality. And his palette is great. There were some amazing performances. Delroy Lindo was great. Mekhi Phifer did the lead. That was his first movie.
His first role, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, as they said, some critics said about Katharine Hepburn, she had all the skills from A to B, and he was learning then. And I'm not, Spike did what he did. I wrote a script. I was for Scorsese. He didn't want to do it. Spike jumped in and he rewrote me. And the worst thing is when you're writing an adaptation of your own material, because you're writing it for a different medium, and what is most valued in a novel which is its depth. There's no depth in it. It's all on the screen. It's all flat. People see things, say things, and do things. End of story. So, I like Clockers, but I didn't love it.
Well, first of all, I agree with you about Mary. That was the one character. I agree that Mary was my favorite, and that was the one character that I really wanted to see more of her, what goes on in her life. You touched on how the differences with screenwriting and whatnot, and I noticed as I was doing your book, that I watch so much streaming now, binge watching, that it's sort of infected my imagination when I read a book. I'm starting to see it like, what's this going to look like on Netflix? I'm just wondering, does all the, You know, the overload of media we have access to now, does that affect your writing imagination as you're writing these books? Does it kind of interfere with your
Nah,
process?
I know exactly what you're talking about. The only good thing about streaming, like, you know, is they need content. And the thing about feature films, which I hated, is, especially if you're adapting a source, is, you know, you got to tell an entire story, create an entire world from beginning to end in 2 hours or less. With streaming, when you have episodic, it's like writing a novel. It's like you're writing chapters. You have all this leisure time to develop characters. You know, it's not like you start writing and you're sitting on a hot stove and you can't get off the stove until you finished writing, you know, in 2 hours. It's speed chess. And I had an increasingly harder and harder time doing that. And I don't want to do that at all. It's antithetical to my writing.
Thank you.
I could use the money though.
And I'm up. Whoa. I'm sorry. Can't see. Hi. You, whoa. Step back a little bit. You spiked my curiosity when you spoke about clockers and spoke about you were in the prison and a prisoner asked you, how did you do that? I appreciate your writing. In my mind, you set up a scene for me and it's exciting. I want to hear the rest of that scene. What did you say in response?
What did I say in thought?
Well, no, not in thought. I want to hear how you actually answered that question. How'd you do that?
I was kind of relieved. I thought he was going to kill me. So I tell you, so I probably said thank you, but I was also taken aback that, listen, you don't have to be a thing to create a facsimile of that thing that is primarily true to the source. If you have a good ear, if you're interested, if you have a good imagination, if you have empathy, you can pretty much write about anyone that you can put those skills towards. And I wasn't trying to write like a prisoner. I was trying to write like people on the street. I mean, I spend so much time on the street, I should be paying the street rent. It's just, I have a natural ear for stuff. Some people have a natural ability to run fast. I have an ability to hear fast. I can't run for shit, especially now. I was flattered and I was kind of taken aback at the same time. But it was validation for me when he said that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I appreciate hearing this. Okay.
Yes, we have time for 2 more questions. I have one behind me and I have one more online as well. So take it away.
I wanted to ask about the way you think about structure with the novels. I tend to agree with Dee that Clockers is so close to perfect and thrilling, partly because of how it's put together. We're following Strike and we're following Rocco, and just those moments when they intersect as it's building up can be really thrilling. And when you were talking about this, you were sort of like, I hung out for a few years, building collapsed, and then I'm like, I got the book. But how do you think about the way that it comes, because they all come together so masterfully? If you could talk a little bit about the way you think of structuring them.
Well, listen, you go with, I know the story. I know the story I want to tell. I don't know how detailed I know the story in advance. It's like going in, I could tell you the story in 5 minutes, but 5 minutes covers 5 years of writing. And in the process of writing, you realize, well, no, this is wrong, because as I'm writing this, it would make more sense if this is what this person is doing, that they would follow by doing that. It's like you have a rough plan to build a house. And in the course of putting the house together, you realize, oh no, I thought the light was coming from the west. And you start rearranging things, taking things out, adding things that you couldn't even imagine in the abstract. Once you start writing, things happen in a way that cannot come through a careful outline. It's what you always got to give yourself elbow room, and you always got to give yourself room to like ad lib or catch yourself in things that don't feel truthful, to the characters.
And so our last question is an online question, and they ask, it's another craft question. What is your writing process like? I know you talked earlier about how the journey can be a bit tumultuous to get to the end of the draft, the end of the book. So, but is there a norm of your process when you write? Is there a typical writing day?
Yeah, my typical writing day consists of lingering in bed till like it's unbearable, talking to my wife in bed, and until we say, then we hear like this distant trumpet going, coffee, coffee, coffee. We jump out, we have coffee. We spend like an hour and a half reading the papers, doing coffee. All of a sudden it's noon, and it's like, the only time I write is when I panic because, oh my God, what's happening to the day? I've been messing up, losing a whole day. So, but writing, like getting out of bed and being disciplined, nah. But what? And then I'm up there and I'm in my office and I waste another hour. I just have to check this one thing on Amazon, and become street things. And there's a new show on Netflix. I better put that in the calendar. All of a sudden it's 3:00 and I'm really freaking, and I start to write in earnest. But I never these days. I don't think I put in a good 3 hours a day.
I have one more question from the online audience. There's still some time. Are you down for it?
Am I down for the question?
Yes.
Depends on the question.
What are you writing next?
2 pilots for TV because I need the dough. I'm writing about lifeguards. What? I can't even swim in a bathtub. And I'm writing about this LAPD junior cadet program. And I don't speak LA, let alone LAPD. You can write, use your imagination, do a little homework, write, grit your teeth, write, get it done, get paid, and think about your next novel.
And with that, I want to thank our moderator, Dee Watkins.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your questions.
And I want to thank our author, Richard Price.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And so now it is up to our audience to buy some books. Our bookseller outside, Greedy Reads, has Lazarus Man and some of Richard's previous books in paperback as well. Please go outside and buy some books. We'll be outside in a couple moments for the signing. Thank you for joining us.